Then there is Henry Katzew. Katzew is well known among the Jews. Henry Katzew, K-A-T-Z-E-W, Katzew, a former South African journalist now living in Israel. Henry Katzew, who reported in the leading daily, The Star, dated the 5th of December 73, under the caption, "For Israel, a perpetual specter of war." Always the war, the sword of Damocles on their heads. For Israel, a perpetual specter of war. He continues, the 25-year history, in bracket I put my own words, it's in the book, when you go home you can read it, the full quotation. Now over 40 years, the strife, war going on, of the Judeo-Arab conflict since the birth of Israel should bring Israelis to the conclusion that politics will not solve the Jewish problem. This is the Jew talking now. But immediately you say, look, this Jew here, this is what he says. The Jews say he is a self-hating Jew. He hates to be a Jew himself. Must be something terribly wrong with your nation, that every time a man speaks out, he is a self-hating Jew or is an anti-Semite. He says, he continues, they must be prepared, the Jews must be prepared to open themselves to a spiritual alternative. Not my words. Go and check them up in the archives of the newspapers. They must be prepared, the Jews must be prepared to open themselves to a spiritual alternative, to effect a spiritual revolution, which in turn would lead to the vast new developments. I said, this young man must have been listening to me in the Rondebosch, that Hall of the Jews, in 1967. And again, learned men of the Jews, erudite scholars, Robert J. Donovan, on page 17 of his book, Israel's Fight for Survival, he says, in a report of the Institute for the Middle East, published in 1959, it was noted that there was a time when there was no such thing as an Arab-Jewish problem. No Arab-Jewish problem. When relationship between the two peoples were as normal as those between cousins. And Professor Goitein, the chairman of the School of Oriental Studies at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, on page 21 of his book, Jews and Arabs, he repeats the same words. He says, there is much more to the popular belief that Jews and Arabs are close relatives, cousins. He puts down cousins, close relatives, and he says cousins, because they were descended from the brothers Isaac and Ishmael, the sons of Abraham, coming from the same father, Abraham. They were cousins. And the latest, on the 1st of January this year, 1989, 1st of January, Danny Bental, a Jew, described as a reservist in the Israeli army during his latest tour of duty in Gaza. This Jew, he is serving in the Israeli army. During his latest tour of duty in Gaza, reports in the Star again. This is not a Muslim newspaper. They refused to put our advert a second time because of the Jewish protest. We wanted to repeat our advert, they stopped it and said, no, our Jewish customers, they don't want us to have that thing in. That Star reports this young Jew talking. He is a journalist. He says that the Palestinian state already exists. This state of Palestine already exists. Let there be no mistake about that. It exists in Jabaliyah and Shati, in the mosques and in the mind. In the mind of the people, this Palestinian state is there. It exists. Judging by the proliferation of Palestine Liberation Organization flags in Shati, we have already begun to lose the battle for this square mile of Eretz Israel. This is the start. That first battle says we have already started to lose this battle for the first square mile of Israel is already gone. He says a sort of status quo has been reached. They have nothing to lose. The Palestinians have got nothing to lose. From this point on, life is cheap. By God, life is cheap when you know what you're fighting for. They are fighting for their independence, their national identity, their pride. He continues, for all the fear we inspire in the local populace, we no longer maintain absolute control over their lives, no longer maintain absolute control over their lives. The symptoms of eventual defeat for the Jews are already obvious. Who is he? A self-hating Jew, an anti-Semite. Say so. I want the guys who can say, look, this guy's an anti-Semite. He is a man serving the Israeli army and reported in one of the most leading newspapers of South Africa, the Star. Not in a Muslim newspaper in Saudi Arabia. He says, he continues, we catch a rock-throwing child throwing stone, probably no more than 12 years. No more than 12 years old. In his eyes, I detect a certain pride behind the fear of what is about to happen to him. Soldiers start shouting, hit him, smash his head in, break his arms, so he won't throw stones again, teach him a lesson. He continues, this from soldiers who only days before had been law-abiding and God-fearing citizens. This from people, days before, God-fearing people, law-abiding citizens, and God-fearing citizen of the state that was created in order to shelter